All right, we're live here. We want winners post game show. 49ers beat the New York Giants 30-12 in a game that was, I think, a little bit closer in the first half, maybe even 2.5 quarters there. But the Niners did pull away. And I was thinking about this because no Brandon Ayuk for the Niners, but no Saquon Barkley for the Giants. So they were both missing a giant piece of their offense. But the Niners just have a much more talented roster. And when you miss a Brandon Ayuk, you go, okay, well, who's going to step up? And Debo steps up. And Al Michaels even said it. The 1994 49ers motto was so many weapons. And Al Michaels uttered that on the broadcast tonight. But Rod, how do you feel after this game, which turned into a little bit of a rout, but was maybe not that big of a rout earlier in the game?
Yeah, it was a weird game, but Thursday games just are weird.
They're
and
weird.
This kind of turned into a hybrid. When I kind of give you guys a insight into when I'm betting, I kind of try to come up with a scenario of how the game is going to play out. And then once I decide on that, and again, I'm just guessing, but I bet accordingly. In Thursday night game, this game specifically, I thought it could go one or two ways. Thursday night games, a lot of the times they have to feel like preseason games. Like there's not a lot of game planning. The guys just kind of try to ball control it and, try to just steal a win, basically. Or it could go the other way where one of the teams just gets up real quick and then the other team is playing from behind. This was kind of a hybrid. The Niners they got up, but I don't know. It was just a weird kind of deal. Like, because like there was a time there where the Giants, it felt like they were in it more than, after they had taken the Niners' best punch, but they were still hanging right there. I'm on our little pick'em thing. I had the minus 10.5.
Yeah.
And it just felt like this has the back door is unlocked. This has a backdoor cover written all over it. I never felt the Giants were going to win, but when they got the ball back and with 5 minutes left, the drive that ended up in the interception, I was like, man, they're gonna go down here and they're gonna score this touchdown, and then they're going to and then the Niners will just run the ball out and they're gonna cover.
Sean McVay would have figured out a way to kick 3 field goals to get to 9.
So it didn't end up going up, but it just had a real kind of funky feel to it. Brock got off to an interesting start. This is the first time ever I bet Brock over 225 yards was the number, and then had him at over, the number was over 15.5 fantasy points. And it was I made a Facebook post. Is I got this dude, I bet him for the first time, and he's missed more throws on his first drive than he has in his entire career. It was just I have jinxed this dude. But so he got off to kind of a slow start as well, but he righted the ship and ended up having a really good game. But it was just a really weird start.
So Shelvin is hanging out with us, and he said we still haven't played a complete game. The Pittsburgh game was pretty close. They went into Pittsburgh and kind of beat the bumps off of Pittsburgh. But these last two games, the Rams game, some of that, as we mentioned, was the McVay and Shanahan. You kind of know each other better than you know yourself kind of games. And the Niners were like a B- in that game. And for the first half, I actually thought they were worse in this game. I thought they were like a C+. But again, you have the talent, you have the depth. They pulled away in the second half, so it wasn't a bad performance. But your Brock commentary, Bill Simmons was like, "What's going on with Brock? Is Sam Darnold going to start warming up?" And I was like,
"That might be a bit premature.
It's not that bad." But also, Bill Simmons has this angle based on the football people he talks to, that he believes that the Niners think that Sam Darnold is actually the better player, but you kind of have to go with Brock based on last season. I don't believe that. We know Sam is talented, and I would love to see, you have these different scenarios. I'd love to see what Sam Darnold could do with this team, but I'm fine with what we have right now because Brock's playing some good football.
I
But
don't know, man. I totally respect Bill Simmons's opinion. He's a sharp dude, and
yeah,
even when I disagree with him, it's not like he's not like Cowherd or Stephen A. Smith that just says like ridiculous shit.
yeah, he's not
Just
trying. He's not trying to go viral. He's
So I mean, I respect that, but I mean, I tell you what, I'm trying to find me a woman that looks at me like Kyle looks at Brock. I just don't. I don't see it. I mean, he could be right. I think that Kyle has got his man.
yeah,
Brock to me is like Cousins 2.0. I mean,
yeah.
I think he'll ride with Brock till the wheel falls off. So I don't, I've kind of settled into that idea that this is Brock's deal. We're gonna go as far as Brock takes us. I just like I say, Bill Simmons is a lot smarter than me, but I just can't force. I can't see a set of circumstances.
The only
unless he gets hurt.
circumstance
I mean,
is the injury piece. Yeah,
yeah, if
I
he
think
gets hurt,
that's
yeah,
the
I
only
mean
piece.
that's obvious. But I just barring that, it's hard for me to believe that Kyle would sit them down and say, "Hey, Brock, I'm rolling with." I guess it could happen, but I would be shocked. He would have to play. He'd have to play demonstrably worse. We've never seen him play bad enough for that to be, even a question. I don't think
Yeah.
so. I respect the way, I, I'm on record. Look, he's not the most talented dude, but he is very confident, and I love that about him. And I love the fact that as a young guy, he is rarely trying to do things that he can't do. He plays within himself. He knows himself well. He knows his strengths. He appears to know his limitations, and he stays in the lines. He is not trying to be something he's not. And that's that's a wonderful quality for a young person to have to know who they are and just be who they are and not try to please or be trying to figure out what other people want to be and be that. He doesn't seem to be doing that at all. He's just doing him, and it's working out.
So what the
Keep
Giants
doing you, Brock.
what the Giants did, and this wasn't only in the beginning, they did it throughout the game, but I think the 49ers kind of figured it out in the second half. They blitzed 74% of the snaps in this game. I believe that's the number. I think Shelvin posted it in the Discord. Nick Wagoner tweeted that they blitzed 74% of the dropbacks. That's the highest blitz rate faced by a quarterback with at least 30 dropbacks since Colin Kaepernick against Arizona in 2013. The 29 blitzes Brock faced more than doubled his previous high of 14. That was a big difference in the first half, I thought. I thought the Niners came out a little bit flat. I don't know if they just did not expect the blitzes or if the play calls, we have this idea of scripting these play calls in the beginning of the game, and some of that I'm sure has to do with what you believe the other team is going to do. And the Giants just flat out blitz. And I posted in the Discord that the Giants hadn't had a sack in the first two games. I think they got 2 in this game, but they desperately wanted to get to the quarterback. And that was such a big part of their game plan. And they went after Brock, and I thought it worked. Those first couple of drives, he was missing receivers. The timing was off. There was that stuff, that blitz, that all-out blitz. Like, this is like the Madden blitz where you just blitz everybody, the John Madden football game. And it was, they were in the red zone, and Kittle kind of gets a little bit of a slip off of the line, and Brock has to throw the ball away. But all of those things, they were working, and then we gave the 49ers and Shanahan enough time to figure it out. And by the second half, I thought they attacked where the blitzes were coming a little bit better. They were utilizing their run game with not only CMC but also Elijah Mitchell. He got a nice little run there, and they did it all without Brandon Ayuk, who has been their best receiver over the last probably year. And they got it done. We got to see a little bit more of George Kittle. George Kittle was a little bit more of the safety valve tonight. I think especially when Debo made that great play where he caught that short slant and then he just dragged a bunch of guys, another 5 or 6 yards, and he had to come out of the game. And I was like, we got Ray and JJ and whomever else out there. And it was Kittle who they went to, who had a one-on-one against the safety. So they figured it out. But the thing, I think if you are a cynic and you're trying to look for something negative, you think about the Eagles. If the Niners were to start this slow against the Eagles, and we know how that RPO works with Hurts and how they played the Niners in the conference championship game, where the Niners just look so confused with that RPO, that's a little bit different, because what the Giants couldn't do is it couldn't take advantage of the early quality play of their defense, because they just couldn't. They had one, I think they had one touchdown all game long and a couple field goals. So against a better team, maybe it's a little bit different, but against the Giants, the Niners were able to take care of business. And I don't know if you know the numbers. Daniel Jones threw for 137 yards in this game.
Yeah.
His best receiver, or I won't say best, but his top receiver with 6 catches was Paris Campbell, 4 yards per catch on 6 catches. So the pass rush was on Daniel Jones. He did not have a lot of time, and the Niners were absolutely not afraid of getting beat deep, and they kept everything in front. And the defense, this was probably their best game from the perspective of front line, rushing the passer, that point of view. But overall, they win going away. But if you're looking for the little pieces, you could find them against a better team. Now they won't see that next week because they're going to get Arizona. But in 2 weeks when Dallas comes in, it could be a little bit of a different story.
It was one thing that I found interesting. It was the first time, his Brock's size is always going to be a point of contention, just based on injury risk, little guy, just small quarterbacks getting hit. But this was the first time, one of the downsides of having a smaller quarterback, and, the Seahawks used to, had that problem with Russell Wilson, is that when the pocket collapses or the pocket gets muddy, this was the first time that the picture wasn't really clear for Brock. He had pressure like right in his face, and it was the first time that he really because most of the time he's set back and he's got a good picture, but it was the first time in my eyes that he like really looked small out there. Those guys were like up on him, and he was having to, make room with those blitzes to, find his windows. And he did a good job of that, but it was interesting. Like you say, just something to file away, but I mean, that I say that about his size, but you can look at the greatest quarterback of all time. Pressure in your face, no quarterback really likes having the pocket moving back on them. So, I mean, this is not a criticism of Brock. It's not something that's unique to him. No quarterback likes it. But it was the first time in my recollection in his short tenure that he was really having to deal with any kind of consistent pressure in that way. And like you say, it was kind of choppy early, but they figured it out. And he ended up playing a very good game, which again is something that if you our fan base don't have any problems trying to turn Brock's performances into a positive. But if you want to take something objectively, was that he did not start particularly well, but he got stronger as the game went on, and he ended up having a really good game. That touchdown to Debo was, that was a really smart throw. Again, pressure in his face. He puts it where only Debo could get it, back shoulder. It was beautiful. I mean, that's probably one of his best throws.
Yeah.
As a 49er, 35-yard touchdown throw, back shoulder, beautiful.
And that's what happens when you blitz so much, right? We'll take Debo one-on-one almost any time, like probably every time, and they blitz and they leave their man on an island there, and the 49ers are able to take advantage of it.
Like you mentioned Kittle. He was one of my best bets. He was like 9. It was like plus. He was like 9.5 fantasy points. He ended up with 16. So that was an easy win. I got the bad beat on Daniel. My other best bet was Daniel Jones.
Rushing
Daniel
yards?
Jones. No, well, that one was a total dud. But on my top parlay, I had Daniel Jones over 32.5 pass attempts, and I missed it by half. Yeah, because I figured my thought was the game plan that they would get behind, he would be throwing it, and it happened. But just one time, they put Tyrod Taylor in there, and he got my other pass attempt.
Yeah, he was 0 for 1. Yeah, Brock 25 of 37. He was 12 of 21 at one point, so that would have made him 13 of his last 16, if I'm doing that math correctly. Over 300 yards, which I don't know if I would have even
I think that's the
thought.
First. Has he been over 300 yards yet? Maybe, I don't know.
It might have been that first game against Miami when they were just throwing.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, but this was a very overall I thought it was a very impressive performance by him.
2 touchdowns, 111.3 quarterback rating. Now, the player of the game to me, and you could probably find somebody on the defensive line if you wanted to, or maybe just collectively the defensive line. But Debo was 6 catches for 129 yards, so over 20 yards a catch with that touchdown that you mentioned. He had that 40-yard that little post play, or that little in that he ran, and he just kept going. There was a 40-yard, that was the 40-yard play. Though he could have had a lot more.
Oh,
because there were out of Brock's what was it, his 37 pass attempts. Debo had 12 targets, but he only had 6 catches. So there was still something on the table there for Debo. So there was a couple. I think there was one where they threw that sort of like that sweep play, and that he threw it a little too high for Debo. But overall, Debo was fantastic. And like you said, Kittle was 7 for 90. That's his best game in a little while. And he looked like the Kittle of old. Not only was he fast, but he was also dragging guys. And then we can't say anything without just mentioning McCaffrey. McCaffrey didn't go for 100, but it's only because he only had 18 carries. He had the touchdown, very impressive run. He's very rarely do you see McCaffrey go backwards, which is,
he is so good. He is just so good. And I made mention of it at training camp. I mean, it was like, when he took off, the guys couldn't touch him. It was like, even if they were playing flag football, nobody would, he's like that kid in Pop Warner who is just flat better than everybody. But this is the NFL. It's just, he is freaky unreal. Elijah Mitchell kind of got going. I mean, he was kind of unimpressive to me early, but it felt like he was kind of getting his footing. And he broke off a couple of really nice runs there in like the third quarter. I know he only ended up with like 3.8 average, but he had some really good runs as well. It's going to be one of the things that I'm going to be interested to see. I had Brock down for a kind of alarming 4 turnover worthy type throws. It's going to be interesting to see what PFF credits him with. He got some really lucky bounces. Adoree Jackson could have had at least 2 picks, and then he had another one that they ended up calling pass interference on that popped straight up in the air and could have easily been picked. So our guy Brock, I don't know if Purdy is Irish, but he definitely had a 4-leaf clover today. And again, these are not criticisms. Everybody has those kind of games, but it was just interesting to note that it doesn't always go that way, and sometimes you'll make good throws and those will turn into picks, and then so it all kind of evens out. But again, it was another solid win for the 49ers, and hopefully my hope is that we don't take the gas off and let those sad sack Cardinals come in here and have some life. They're not trying to win games. Let's be completely honest. They are tanking for real, and the fact that the Giants were down so big to them, was was kind of alarming.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I guess we get, what is it, 10 days off now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be good for IU.
You mentioned the sort of the luck a little bit. On some of those whistles, I felt like the Niners got the benefit of the whistle today.
Mm-hmm.
The only one that they didn't get, and again, this is more reputation than anything else, is Greenlaw's play, where he kind of comes in at the end there.
He's not getting the benefit of the doubt.
No.
I could see the ref when the play was like bang bang. You could see the ref just going for it. Yeah, I mean, you just know at this point, anything close with Dre is going to be a flag.
Yeah, and so there was pass interference calls, there was defensive holding calls that kept drives going for the Niners, and they were penalties. There was the one close one where they had the push. I forget who the push was on, but I think the official in the booth came on and said, it was after 5 yards, and so it was a penalty. But sometimes they let that stuff go. Right. But ultimately, the Niners got the benefit of the doubt. And here's the other thing: when you stretch the field, and they didn't really do it that much until later in the game, when you have the ability to stretch the field and you are taking shots, you're going to get some of those calls because you're going downfield. You're not going to get a long pass interference play if you just throw short passes all game long. So you test that stuff and it can work to your benefit.
And that's the thing that, there was a lot of conjecture about Brock and his misses last game deep. And, the analogy I came up with that I kind of like is that, I compare it to Steph. And if you wanted to criticize Steph's post-up game, I mean, okay, but that's not like really what he does. I mean, okay, so Brock is never going to be Trey Lance. He's never going to bomb you out like that, but that's not what he's asked to do. But what you just mentioned is what the deep pass is about. It's about creating opportunities. It's about keeping the game, the team, the other defense honest. And he throws plenty well enough to do that. I mean, he doesn't. They're just not gonna ask him to drop back and try to bomb people out. That's just, it would be foolish to do that. But he is more than capable of taking shots and hitting shots when they present himself. And Kyle is excellent at scheming him opportunities to do so. And even if he misses them, they serve to keep the defense honest. And again, he is more than capable of doing that, even if he's not. I mean, he's, they did a whole lot about his dad's fondness for Dan Marino. He ain't never gonna be Dan Marino. Okay, I mean that's just, he's not gonna be attacking teams down the field 50 yards, but he doesn't have to be plenty effective. But he's more than effective enough deep that teams have to honor him. You can't just, there were corners, and I even posted videos. I remember famously in Tennessee 2 years ago, their cornerbacks weren't even opening their hips on Jimmy. They just had no respect for the fact that Jimmy was going to throw it deep. He just wasn't going to do it. And they knew he wasn't going to do it. And that is a problem when teams don't have to, they don't have to even concern themselves with plus 20. I don't think Brock is ever going to be that guy that you can just completely disregard that portion of the field against him. And that's all we need.
Yeah, absolutely. So Rick is also in the chat. Rick said Kittle, CMC, and Debo, a.k.a. the Wrecking Crew. What about Dr. Dre and the world-class Wrecking Crew?
World-class Wrecking Crew. They are so good. And, you put BA in there. I mean, this is just such a talented and diverse skill position group. And any one of these guys, I mean, Kittle 7 for 90, and in a perfect, if everybody's healthy, he's like the fourth option. He blocks more than he runs routes, and I mean, he's a game wrecker. I mean, we saw in 2019, you could split him out wide. I mean, he can play the X. I mean, he's just such a talented weapon. CMC he's one of the best backs in the league. Clearly, I don't think that's that's like a cold take. And then Debo, I mean, is he our best receiver? I don't know. I mean, he is, with the ball in his hand. I still contend there aren't 5 guys in the league. You can't name me 5 guys in the league better with the ball in their hands than Debo Samuel. But I think it's pretty much understood that, BA is a better route runner than Debo. I don't know if he's as impactful as Debo is a monster. But he is not your traditional wide receiver. He's not gonna Stephon Diggs you or, Brandon Ayuk. He's not that kind of precise route runner, but he showed it several times today. He gets in the open field and he can run through your defense. He can run through your defense. He did run through their defense.
Yeah.
So that is just it's so they're so fun to watch.
What did you think of the Amazon broadcast with Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit?
Al Michaels is one of my favorites.
I love listening to Al Michaels do commentary.
Herbie, he's fine. I know some people really like him, and some people, that's the funny thing about announcers is they are so polarizing.
Yeah.
I hear people talk about how much they hate Joe Buck. I mean, I don't. He just doesn't. I know there's an Aikman thing, there's a Cowboy thing with me and Aikman that I can completely acknowledge. But neither one of those dudes are as I don't think they're as terrible as people make them out to be. I mean, and if you want to try to, I think it's unfair to compare anybody to like Summerall and Madden. I mean, that's kind of the gold standard in terms of national broadcast teams, I think. So it's unfair to compare any of those guys. I have more of an aversion to Papa and Ryan than I do, honestly, any national team.
The homers.
I just they just rub me the wrong way. And there's nothing wrong, I guess, with being homers, but I don't know that though. I don't listen to them. There were people were really hating on Mark Sanchez. I kind of like his energy.
He was okay.
He's kind of infectious.
A little goofy.
But he is kind of goofy. And like you said, there were times when he's kind of a bit much, but it's in a good way. It's in a good natured way. I like somebody. I like enthusiasm. But yeah, I don't really. I can't really think. Sitting here right now, put me on the spot. Is there really a national team that I just really have like a real aversion to? I mean, Collinsworth, I don't really love him. Tirico, I guess, and I think again with him, he following Al Michaels doesn't do him any justice or service. I just think so highly of Michaels that anybody replacing him, and then the way they did it, I didn't really care for either. Like they were kind of trying to push him out the door. It felt like they were kind of trying to shoehorn Tirico into spots, which and then the whole failed Breeze thing. It was just NBC is just kind of a shit show. But yeah, I love Al Michaels. I'll just say that.
Yeah, the team was good. Herb Street is very vanilla. He's very college football, but
I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is with Herbie. It's not that I don't really like him. It's just, I mean, he is kind of synonymous with Chris Fowler. It's him and Fowler, and him. He just seems out of place in a pro booth. Kind of to me, like I think that's with Papa even more so than being a homer, is he'll always be the Raider announcer to me. I think it's close to where he's been here almost as long as he was with the Raiders. But I mean, to me, I'm always waiting for him to say touchdown Raiders.
He is first and foremost an Al Davis guy.
Yeah,
still to this day,
for sure. Yeah, for sure.
The thing about Herb Street that I find it so interesting is Amazon streaming platform, this new way to do football. He has this interesting opportunity to kind of be the voice of Amazon or the voice of Thursday Night Football, and no one wants to do NFL. That's kind of like the pie in the sky is the NFL. And he is so low key about everything. I was like, if you just amped it up 20%,
just a little bit,
you probably do yourself you do your career a bit of justice there. Just dial it up a little bit, because Al's a legend. He's going to set you up to hit home runs, but Herb Street seems like he's okay with hitting, little bloopers over the second baseman's head.
Just pretend it's Ohio State football. If you did that, you would dial it up to a level that would be appropriate, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so what did you think about Christians? They definitely were a little bit more mindful of his carries today. I think Shanahan probably felt a little guilty last week of playing him the entire game and not getting Mitchell in there, though I read something from Barrows where Barrows said, I think Bobby Turner. has the freedom to kind of pull Christian out whenever he sees that he needs to come out, and he can put Eli in. And so, basically it's probably more than just Shanahan. There's a strategy involved here where other people have responsibility, but still Christian did not come out. And so it looked like there was a concerted effort to make sure that they did not overplay him in this game on a short rest, on a Thursday night so early in the season. I thought it was smart, though, I think a lot of people thought, hey, if CMC was here instead of Mitchell, we may would have scored another touchdown or two.
Yeah, I in theory understood what the hullabaloo was because it stood out to me. I mentioned it on last week's pod that no other running back got any touches, but I also in the moment, it wasn't Monday morning quarterback, it was right after the game.
Yeah.
That the Rams, especially in the first half, had the time of possession. He only ended up with 20 carries. So I know, and he doesn't like to come out.
Yeah.
So I understood in theory the concern, but I didn't think that they overplayed him in that particular game. I didn't think that there were tons of opportunities for him to come out in that circumstance. And then I went back and forth with people last week, in this notion of the game being out of hand. This game was more out of hand than the Rams game.
Yes.
And I just don't see all these depth pieces that we're going to be putting in that, Matt Stafford threw for like 400 yards last week against our ones. They ended up only they lost by 7. If you wave the white flag and pull all the starters, the Rams haven't agreed not to continue to try to score, and that's what Kyle talked about in his post-game presser. Is what his fear is always Detroit from the first game of the season 2 years ago, where we got up really big on the road and we started pulling guys, and he started having to put guys back in because it got out of hand. It was, Detroit started to come back. So it's a fine line. Load management is a real thing. I am not as opposed to it as some people are. Factories run their machines on A and B cycles. Farmers rotate their crops to, to let the fields, rest and regenerate. So I don't really have a problem, especially in other sports, the NFL, the NBA particularly, with if these people who are tasked with making these determinations, if they tell me I can get 5 more years out of Steph by playing him 34 minutes and giving him 1 day off every 4 games, then so be it. If you can tell me that Christian McCaffrey never over 15 carries and it will lead to X more production in the playoffs, then that's fine. But just to be pulling dude, and because that's what it felt like to me last week, because we were just talking about we should have just pulled him just to pull him. I didn't think he was overused, and I didn't really see that there were any real spots to pull him. Today, we ended up with 39 carries. Should he have got 39 carries today? Of course not. He got half of them. That's about right. So good job, Kyle. And that's what we should be trying to do, is right size him and not trying to just do something for the sake of doing it. Which I think it would have been trying to shoehorn Elijah Mitchell in last week. I think it would have been inappropriate. I think it was right sized this week. Christian got the amount of touches that I felt was warranted, and they got other guys involved, which is, always good. Oh wow, I didn't even notice that. I'm looking here right now. I didn't know Darnold even got in. I didn't. Even
He
notice.
got into the last series.
I guess I started. I came over and started setting up. So I didn't. I didn't watch all the way to the end. Yeah, good for him.
One thing that surprised me and kind of continues to surprise me, and we made this observation during the preseason when Trey Lance was still on the team, in that in the face of the blitz, 49er QBs were not running at all. And I thought there were a couple of opportunities where Brock could have taken off and got a first down, and instead tried to sit there in the pocket and try to pick apart where the open guy was. I do wonder if this is a strategy to sit a little bit more rather than run so quickly in the face of danger, because if we're looking at the stats, uh, Brock had 4 carries for -1 yards, and I think all of those runs were just in the face of like trying not to get sacked rather than stepping up and taking advantage of the blitz and picking up a few yards here and there.
And that is kind of a source of frustration for me. Everybody keeps telling me that Brock had this split that's as good as Lamar Jackson. Okay, fine. I am just a devotee of the RPO, and I think that it's a segment and a type of offense that would be beneficial. And he's not Jimmy Garoppolo. He's not Lamar Jackson, but I think you could do some stuff with some design or run option stuff with Brock. He seems like he's a decent enough athlete to at least, again, talking about the deep passing, to at least show that and give defenses something to think about. I mean, I don't know, maybe that'll come at some point, or maybe Kyle is just happy with letting Brock be, and maybe you don't want to. Okay, it just occurred to me as I'm stream of thought, and this is not something I giving a whole bunch of thought. Maybe he just didn't want to put him in harm's way.
Yeah,
in that way.
I think that's probably what it is
maybe,
too.
Just sitting here right now, stream of consciousness. That's fair. Okay, if you don't want to expose him to those hits, fair enough.
But what
juice is probably not worth the squeeze.
And they probably didn't do a lot of this because of the over blitzing by the Giants, but you didn't see a lot of rollouts. You didn't see a lot of play action. And then Brock kind of bootlegs over to the left side. Everything was shotgun pocket or underneath the center pocket. It was a very straightforward offense from the Niners today. So maybe that is because of the over blitzing. You're just trying to take advantage of hoping that the pass protection holds up, and you're going to find an open guy because the defense is basically playing, man in the secondary with so many guys blitzing. So that's possibly what it is too.
Yeah, like I say, I'm forever hopeful. They opened up their first play of the game. Brock comes out in pistol.
Yes.
And I'm like, yes. But no, there was no run action off the pistol.
Trent
Brock.
Also got called for a illegal man downfield on an RPO-ish attempt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's stuff that if they're going to utilize that, they probably just need to get a little tighter with it.
Yeah.
All right. As we kind of get to the end of this, we haven't talked much about the defense, but man, that was a nice performance there. When you think about what Hargrave means to this team, when you think about Bosa got the nice sack, which they called on the 1 yard line. I think it was closer to like the half yard line.
Yeah.
And I know Rick in the chat, Rick thought it was a safety. He's like, come on, that's a safety.
I didn't. He did not contact him in the end zone. It was more of the half yard line.
I thought it was the half yard line.
Yeah. But it was close, and it was. Yeah. He what was it? One sack, and did he have 2 more quarterback hits? Pressures gets weird in terms of tracking them. I have at this point. I trust PFF numbers definitely over mine. So it'll be interesting to see how many pressures they end up giving him. But again, he is just a force, and you see how teams have to game plan blocking him. And both Armstead and Hargrave were beneficiaries of that. I'm gonna give him a shout out because we have it. Kinlaw has put together 3 really solid performances in his role as a backup defensive tackle. He had a real good pressure. He actually forced out the guy on the Hargrave side. It was him who created the initial pressure. So it's good to, see him just, it's a bit part, but he's playing that part well. And I mean, obviously it's probably not the part you want a first round 14th overall draft pick playing, but it's a role nevertheless, and we're getting more out of him than we've gotten at any other point in his career. So kudos to him for that.
They got a pick late in the game. Hufanga got a pick. It was tipped, and then I think it was tipped again by Fred Warner, who's, I don't know, he's really got a nose for where the football is so far this season. He didn't have that many tackles today, but that's more the product of.
He played a huge role in keeping Darren Waller under wraps. Because is another guy that I thought, was worried, concerned about coming in, having a big game. And, he was a non-factor.
3 for 20.
And if he is not a factor, they really don't have any other, with Saquon out, all the rest of those dudes are complementary players at best. There's Breida looked, good. I knew he was gonna come in fired up. And I mean, nobody's gonna run against us.
They didn't even stick with him though. He had 4 carries and he looked good. He looked fast. But
that touchdown run was strong. That was a strong effort. But I just think that people get discouraged. I don't think you watch the tape and you just don't believe. And even somebody today, they put the stat up there that over the past 10 games, they rushed for 145 yards a game, which again, that's with Saquon in there. But still, I just think teams get discouraged watching the tape and thinking, we just can't, we can't run against these dudes. And, and then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because we've seen it. Last season, we saw it. Teams like the Atlanta Falcons who just stuck with it, who just believed in it and didn't, because Arthur Smith don't give a damn. If he gets 3 yards to carry, he's going to continue to run the ball. And they ran the ball for 200 yards on us. So there's something to be said for just believing in it and, just continuing to pound it. And they just didn't seem to have the fortitude to do that. And if you do that, you just, good luck, especially when, we've seen it 2 weeks in a row when they play that soft shell. Good luck, driving the ball down the field on us, on 10 and 12 play drives. It's, that's just a hard way to go.
Did you see any of the drama? Oh, not really drama, but I was reading some of the stuff on the Giants, and so game 1, they don't even score against Dallas, and then game 2, they're shut out in the first half against Arizona, and so there was a little bit of a conversation about whether Daboll started to call plays and take over the play calling from Kafka, their offensive coordinator. Because they scored all the points in the second half last week. And so there was all this conversation, and Daboll says, no, I always have a play sheet and we're always talking about stuff. And then they asked Daniel Jones, who's calling the plays? And he's like, well, I always get the play call from Kafka. So that's his thing. And so now if it, I don't know if that conversation exists, because even if Daboll was calling the plays, they were not successful moving the football today. So,
and again, it's one of those deals you give them a pass because it's the 49ers. This is just a really, really, really good defense. So you're not gonna, in terms of trying to make hay against them, good luck, especially without your best playmaker. Because I mean, they're just not a very talented football team offensively. Daniel Jones is fine. He's a well above average athlete, and he's not a bad quarterback. There were several throws that he made that they did not his receivers didn't do him any favors at all. Hanging on to the ball, they were just flat dropping the ball. I know Waller had at least two. Their backup running back just had one fall through his arms. It was just they're just kind of a mess offensively. They did some good stuff early defensively, with the blitzes and Wink Martindale. He can dial up pressures, with the best of them. It's just like you say, you give Kyle and all those weapons time to figure it out. They are just I just think the Giants have a rough way to go. Dabo seems to be a good coach. They're better than they've been in years, but they're just not a very talented football team.
So my wife, the most casual football fan there is, she'll sit with me and watch, a good amount of the Niner games. But sometimes, she'll check out if she's got stuff to do. But her take on Daniel Jones was Daniel Jones, maybe the single most boring name in human history. And Daniel Jones, with that name, should have been handsome. Not very handsome. That was her take on Daniel Jones. And it made me start to study Daniel Jones. And they had this photo of him every time they showed his thing. They had the small little avatar graphic of him. And he's got the stare, like he just looks like a serial killer. I was like, oh yeah, I can see. Like if you don't know who Daniel Jones is, you're like, who is this crazy man? But you know what? You know what I like about Daniel Jones, and this is not going to really play unless A, they get Saquon back, and B, they just have better receivers. But that guy hangs in there, man. He's big, he's strong, he's athletic. He did not. Even when they were getting their butts kicked near the end, that dude was still fighting. So he's got fight in him, and so that was impressive to see. Even when they were down, sometimes you can see QBs kind of check out a little bit. Like you watch Aaron Rodgers from the last 3 years. Every time the Niners were kicking his butt, he was just kind of like, all right, let's just get this over with. I need to get out of here. But Jones was fighting, so I like that about him. But last thing, we'll end it here. So far, so good on one Mustache Moody. Another 3 for 3. Kickoffs were solid. Now, what they're doing with him, or what they're having him do, and they're having all the kickers do this, is there's kind of this balance of, do you want to kick it out of the end zone, or do you want to try to get it high enough to where it falls right where the kick returner has to catch it and try and run it, and you're trying to tackle him before the 25-yard line. And so I'm seeing that Moody's able to get some height on that kick. There was a couple, one that was pretty short. He's gotten the end zone a couple times, but I see, we saw that first game where Money Making Mitch was kicking off and Pittsburgh was getting to the 35 every time. This is where the strategy of Moody's strong leg is going to really help on that kickoff coverage, because he can kick that ball really high. He may not kick it in the back of the end zone every single time, but he can get that angle high, and the returner may just call fair catch. And
yeah,
I think
we got one of those where he kicked it and it he caught it at like the half-yard line, and he just he fair caught it. And I mean
the fair catch is just as good as kicking it in the back of the end zone, but what it does is it makes the returner make a decision at that split second, and that's you want the ball in play there. So I think that's the strategy.
Because anything can happen. He can muff it, and you can maybe score a touchdown. I mean, so you just never know. So anytime you make him make a decision, is a good thing. And it's fascinating. I just don't know why they don't get it over with and we just place on the 25 every time. I don't know what we're doing with, they clearly, with the fair catch and all that, are trying to legislate the return out of the game. Why don't we just get it over with and just I wonder from the NFL's perspective why the rules committee just doesn't say.
Are the punt teams much different from the kickoff teams? I wouldn't think so. Because if you're the Players Association, maybe you argue that then they're gonna trim the rosters and they won't need as many guys. I think
I
that could
guess.
be an issue, but I don't know, man. You'll still have a punt return team and a punt team, so
And
you're not.
I don't know. I guess there are a lot of things that I think that the union should be fighting hard for next time around. But one of them, I just think it's far time, and I know they've done things with the practice squad and making it more flexible where you can have dudes like Melvin Gordon be on the practice squad, and they extended the practice squad. But I think we need like 4 or 5 more roster spots. I just think with 17 games, the fact that we didn't extend the rosters when we did that is just unconscionable. And I know from the NFL standpoint, it's a money thing.
Yeah.
Even 4 more minimum contracts is that's like $8 million if you talk about.
I just got a text for Jed. He said, "Do you see how much money I paid Bosa, bro?"
But I also see that you guys are steadily creating inventory with like 2 damn Monday Night Football games again. And soon enough we'll have 2 Thursday night games.
They're
And
simulcasting all the Monday Night Football games on ABC for the rest of the year, I think.
I saw that, which is that's not a bad thing, and I'm sure, like everything that the NFL does, that there is a cost component to that, where Disney is trying to get the most bang for their buck out of that. And I'm positive, because it just, Rick was talking about that in our chat earlier this week. It just doesn't, 2 Monday night games, especially when when they're not asynchronous, where you fire one and then the other one fires, while the other one is in. So you've got 2 games going on. It really, in my little pea brain, that just doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense, other than to be able to create more advertising opportunities for Disney. But they paid a lot of money, so you want to try to keep them happy, I guess.
So
I don't know.
the reason why they're doing this, at least right now, is because with the actor strike and the writer strike, there's no new shows on ABC.
That makes sense.
So it's a way to take their most valuable property, and they can actually win the ratings on these days for ABC over the other networks, just because they have the most, they have the biggest game in town. So
that makes sense.
Rick asked if there's going to be 2 Monday night games every Monday this season. No. So what they're doing, and this is another test, which is they're trying to see what the right times are for ABC and ESPN, if there's a difference. So they're having 2 games, one starting at 5, one starting at 6 on the West Coast, so 8 and 9 on the East Coast, and they're trying to figure out, like, on ESPN, is it better to have the game at 5 or 6? On ABC, is it better to have the game at 5 or 6? Now, what might happen is, what they might find out is that they just steal the entire night, and we could see more of these 2-night Monday Night Football games in the future. Previously, the only time we'd see this is they would do it on the very first weekend of the season, or if a game got canceled for any reason, then they would push it to Monday, and they would do it like that. So that it's an interesting experiment for the NFL, and one that, because they are the dandy of television, they could continue to do experiments, because people just flock to watching football. So,
yeah, I guess, just as a fan and a consumer of the product, because I'm all in. It was like frustrating to me last week that I had to kind of pick which one I wanted to watch, because and neither one of them were really exciting games, but I get invested, and once I start watching one, I want to kind of stick with that one. But then if you're doing kind of, it's just weird on a Monday to be trying to do like a red zone type thing with Monday night. I don't know. I'm just used to on Monday nights having that one game, kind of like Sunday nights. I'm a creature of habit. You on Sunday night, you're watching. That's must see TV. You sit and you're watching whatever that game is. For me, I'm gonna watch the Sunday night game regardless of it's 49ers or no, whoever it is. I kind of try to make it a point to sit down, even if I'm working while I'm watching, I'm gonna watch that game. And it for me, Monday Night Football is the same way. So it was just kind of weird last week.
So the league has pretty much maximized the amount of teams that they could have. You have 32 teams. That is about the number that you can probably have, and with scheduling and such. But I don't know if you saw this, but it looks like the USFL and the XFL are going to merge together. And if I'm the NFL, I buy into these leagues and I make sure that these leagues exist, because what you could do a little soccer league thing with this. The Arizona Cardinals, they are the doldrums of the NFL here right now. Now this would be hard. This would be hard with the ownerships. They wouldn't want this to happen. But imagine if the Birmingham Stallions of the USFL, they play up and they're all of a sudden an NFL team. Like, it just, there's a different element to it. And you can kind of, keep this, you can kind of get this minor league football thing going a little bit.
I don't understand why the NFL isn't all in on a minor league type situation. And the spring is just perfect for that. That's why I think that I don't really. I'm going to be honest. I don't really watch the XFL or the
I don't
USFL,
watch it either.
but I am not. I am sympathetic to them, and I see that there's a market for it. I could if and I'm kind of a brand snob. If the NFL slapped their logo on it, I might be more inclined to watch, especially if there was a farm system type element with 49er players. If I knew that he's gone now, but that I could watch somebody like Quantrez Knight or pick a player on our practice squad, if I could buy in to that aspect of it, and then you could do that all around the league. I just don't see, because Raj is always trying to, he's on the the 25 by 27 kick. I would think that that's hella inventory, more inventory for them to sell. I know he seems to be kind of infatuated with the whole international thing.
That's the other thing that I was about to say.
And I am too. I love the idea of international football, and I love the thought of the 49ers playing in Munich or Frankfurt or
Mexico City.
I love Mexico City. I'll go back to Mexico City every time. Paris and London, kind of, I guess. But those Eastern European cities, Munich looked like a blast. So I would love more of that action. I don't know how you make that work in terms of having a team in London or a team in Paris. I don't know, just from a scheduling standpoint, how you would make that work for 17 games. But unless, I've heard it floated that you don't just have one or two teams, you have like four teams, and then you get, I don't know how. I'm not smart enough to make that work. Because I'm like you, I kind of see the league as kind of tapped out. And I mean, you could try to shuffle teams around the country, I guess, but whatever. I don't really see a whole lot of markets that just have to have NFL teams. And I don't honestly see any markets that are just like, we need to get that team out of there either. So, I just think they hit they have right sized it, but I don't think that Roger feels that way.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what the next move towards, growing the ever growing NFL pot, what that looks like.
All right, we are going to end it here. We'll be back next Sunday, not this Sunday, because Niners are off for over a week now. Next Sunday, they have Arizona in the late game, so we'll be back, probably around 4:45, 5 o'clock. But let's shout out to people who are here. Obviously, Shelvin, we said this last week. Shelvin's basically a part of the show now. Shelvin, Rick is an OG, is a We Want Winners OG. Thanks to PA Niner Fan 87, and also there was a great name in the chat earlier. K Owing Bums was in here earlier. Talking about he's not that big of a Purdy fan, but thank you to all of the folks hanging out.
It's cool
with
to
us.
Start seeing names of people that I don't really know, like Shelvin and Rick, and then Robert Ramos. Those are the homies. It's nice to start to see new blood. In the chat and on the feed. So thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, come into the Discord too. We would love to have more people in the Discord. All right. For Rod, I am Double G. We will see you next week. Peace out.